She was deeply shocked by what she saw in the afterlife. Ironically, one might expect that as a nun, she would be better prepared than anyone else for the spiritual realities beyond our mortal existence. Nevertheless, what presented itself to her was so startling that she found a way to let the living know that the world beyond is organized differently from what we have been told. There are aspects that would horrify anyone, and even someone like her, so certain of God's existence, had to admit that heaven and hell look nothing like we imagine. According to her, the sooner people learn the truth, the less they will have to suffer on the other side. Those words belong to the Englishwoman, Frances Banks, who devoted almost her entire life to serving God as a diligent nun. She left our plane in 1965, but unexpectedly, about 6 weeks after her death, Frances Banks began transmitting messages from the afterlife through Helen Greaves, her closest friend. This was a shock to Helen, since she had never been involved in anything of the sort before. Yet, Helen confessed that her consciousness, thanks to her strong friendship with Frances, became receptive to the mental vibrations the nun was sending from the other world. Moreover, many people noted that, during her lifetime, Frances was remarkable for her spiritual fortitude and persistence, so they were not entirely surprised when her messages from beyond started to appear. Evidently, through the strength of her spirit, Frances Banks managed to break through the veil separating our world from other realms. In her communications from the afterlife, Frances Banks admitted that during her initial experiences in the beyond, she was completely taken aback by how little it resembled her expectations. As a child, she had heard stories that each person, upon death, would face a solemn reckoning. Frances believed that the deceased, surrounded by angels, would have to bow before the Creator, who sits on a supreme throne to pass a just judgment on each soul, determining whether it ascends to heaven or descends to hell. But everything turned out to be quite different. Here is how Frances Banks herself described it. "I expected that at the end of my earthly path, a strict trial awaited me, as it does everyone. But in reality, the first thing I saw there was two paths, or more precisely, two lifelines. One represented what I was meant to achieve, who I was supposed to become, which actions I was supposed to carry out, the ideal version of my fate, as prepared by the Lord. The other line was my actual life's path, the one I genuinely lived. I could study both as if they were open books. The point of such a vision was for the soul to compare what it had been called to accomplish on earth with what it had actually done. By comparing what she truly lived through with the Creator's divine plan for her destiny, Frances Banks realized with horror that she had only partially fulfilled God's purpose for her life, sometimes out of laziness, at other times out of fear, and in some cases due to succumbing to various sins before she became a nun. Frances had fallen short in many ways. As she confessed in her messages from the other side, "Seeing the results of the life path I actually followed shook me to the core. I recognized how much I could have accomplished, but failed to do so. I saw how generously God had offered me countless opportunities, yet I had achieved pitifully little. My mistakes and feeble excuses stood before me in all their unforgiving clarity." Frances Banks further noted that in the afterlife, it is impossible to lie to oneself or anyone else. In that realm, absolute honesty reigns. Consequently, those who spent their lives deceiving themselves, masking their dark qualities as virtues, suffer immensely after death, consumed by the blaze of honest confrontation with their own souls. Essentially, conscience is the starting point of that honesty. The less a person lives by conscience on earth, the greater their anguish will be on the other side. In her messages from beyond, Frances Banks also stated that there is no external, fearsome Lord who hands down verdicts. We judge ourselves by our own honesty, and there is no escaping that. Thus, hell is always where a sinful soul exists. If someone's soul is shrouded in darkness, even in paradise they will create their own infernal torment. In the afterlife, every individual is judged by their own conscience, from which one cannot hide. At this trial, Frances recalled, "I was my own accuser and my own judge. I discovered who I really was. After death, no one can evade this moment. No other person can stand as judge the way we judge ourselves once we come face to face with truth. For many who die, that encounter is dreadful. After passing through the fiery crucible of personal honesty, Frances Banks advanced to a higher stage, which she called the resting home. However, she did not remain there long. She then had to choose how she would spend her continued existence in the afterlife. As in her earthly life, she chose a path of service. Frances dedicated herself to helping souls that found themselves in what she called the land of gloom, a place populated by those whose spiritual qualities prevented them from moving on to higher spheres. Simply put, sinners. In her messages from the other side, the nun explained that this region of the afterlife could be called hell for the soul and the mind. Its inhabitants are souls that have not repented and continue to live exactly as they did on earth. Yet the conditions are entirely different now. They still crave to do evil, but they cannot, nor can they stop their selfish impulses. Their suffering is essentially a perpetual self-burning in the fires of their own unfulfilled, base desires. And again, this is in no way related to God's will, nor even the devil's plotting. We choose our own fate through our actions, so it is no surprise that the other side can become so horrifying. Illustrating this, Frances Banks offered an example. If you take one step toward a smoldering volcano each day, it is futile to be shocked when you inevitably find yourself consumed by the flames. In that setting, souls burn over and over until they are entirely cleansed. Many souls, finding themselves in such a dire state, fail to comprehend what is happening to them. They curse God for their fate, sinking even deeper into their personal hell. There are also those who fully understand their situation and their misdeeds, yet still refuse to change. They are so poisoned by sin that it will take them a very long time to purge that poison from their essence. Because Frances Banks had chosen a life of service in the afterworld, she often had to descend into these realms to guide suffering souls toward the light in whatever small way possible. She maintained that no human is doomed to eternal darkness. Anyone can rise to the light by meeting three conditions. First, they must recognize their own mistakes. Second, they must develop an unyielding desire to correct those errors. Third, they must begin serving other souls. This, she explained, is both logical and just. Those who hindered others in life are now obliged to help them. A year and a half after her death, Frances Banks revealed that her tireless efforts had earned her the right to ascend to the next level of the spiritual realm. There, according to her, she appeared even more radiant than in her youth. The nun said that at this elevated stage, her body consisted only of light. She added, "In this other reality, I have understood so much. Through the state of our consciousness, we not only choose the place of our existence, but we also choose our spiritual body. More precisely, we evolve into it as our consciousness changes. Yet there is still more for me to learn." Frances mentioned that she had inquired of those dwelling in higher realms, "Where is God?" and was told that even from those lofty spheres, he remains far beyond immediate reach. We cannot perceive him directly after death because we are not ready. Still, we are on our way to him. Later on, Helen Greaves, who served as a channel for Frances Banks' messages, announced that no further communications would be coming. As her friend the nun had ascended to such heights in the spiritual realm that contact had become extremely difficult. Moreover, worldly life no longer interested her. Nevertheless, even the information Frances did relay is enough for us to take our destinies seriously and reflect on what awaits us when we complete our earthly journey. If what this nun revealed from the other side is true, many of us should strive to do our utmost to ensure that crossing into another reality will not be an overwhelmingly unpleasant shock, but rather just another chapter in our grand voyage through the everlasting road of life. Write in the comments whether you are afraid of crossing over into another world or not, and please give this video a like and click the notification bell so you don't miss new content. Thank you all for watching, and may you enjoy many more years filled with kindness and well-being. While some might find these revelations challenging, others see in them a powerful call to self-reflection. Regardless, Frances Banks' story can motivate us to live each day more mindfully, remembering that our choices shape both our earthly path and our future beyond.